Hello, and welcome to Raising Your Child on Purpose. My name is Abiara Bolu. I'm a teacher with over 16 years experience teaching children aged 4 to 18 and a parenting coach. I believe that the key to raising a successful child is to raise them to be authentic, resilient, and to have a sense of purpose. My guests will be sharing childhood stories that have impacted their adult life to help us understand why raising children who know who they are, love who they are, and are resilient enough to be all they were born to be is so important. Join me and my guest on this episode of Raising Your Child on Purpose. Our guest today is Mr. David Folaranmi. David Folaranmi has a foundation which has a mission to transform lives for good. Now, David's foundation focuses on drug abuse prevention. David is a trained United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime substance abuse educator. He's a seasoned public servant, and his interest lies within counseling, psychology, mental health issues, understanding behavioral patterns, addiction counseling, and rehabilitation. David, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Much. Thank you very much for having me.
David, I'm so glad that you could take time out of your busy schedule to be with us on this podcast.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So my listeners know that what I do is I help parents raise authentic and resilient children who have a sense of purpose. So my real passion is for parents to be aware of, how to raise their children to release the purpose inside of them. And I also want parents to be aware of the things that we can do that might actually prevent that. Now, I heard you speak and I was so blown away, not just because of what you do with your foundation, but because you yourself were hooked on drugs for 7 years. David, can you tell us a bit about your background and how all this came to be?
Okay, thank you very much once again for having me. It's a great privilege to be here on your podcast. Before I go into my background and what I do, I'd like to say what you're doing is extremely commendable. We need to help certain parents. There are a lot of parents who are going through their parenting journeys, and they are clueless. They have absolutely no idea what they are doing. And then this has a ripple effect, not just on the family, but on the society at large, because when you're not being intentional about raising your kids and they go out there and make mistakes, these mistakes could affect the lives of other kids, which in turn will affect the lives of other families. So I think what you're doing, trying to help parents navigate their way through parenting, is really, really commendable. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to me now. My background, I was born into a very strict Christian family. My parents started taking me to church from as young as I could remember. At the age of 8, I was already assisting in Bible studies. I could teach my peers Bible stories. And then I went to mission schools from my primary schools, secondary schools, and down to my university. So this was my idea of parenting. This was my parents' idea of parenting. Just let's take him to church, make sure he's in all the services, all the church programs, all the children programs, all the women programs. I was going for women programs. And then put him in Christian schools and he's going to turn out fine. But how wrong they were. Because the irony of the issue is I went to Covenant University. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Yes.
And that was where I had my first exposure to hard drugs. I had friends who were doing marijuana. A few of them were already trying cocaine, experimenting with mushrooms in the university premises, but at that time, because I was still in tune with what my parents had taught me from home, I was able to navigate to university without experimenting or trying or getting hooked up to drugs. But then after my NYSC, I went to the UK for my master's. I was living in a flat in central London with 2 Europeans. One was Sicilian and the other was Catalan. And they were always doing drugs. It was an everyday thing. I mean, it was normal to them. It was abnormal that I wasn't doing drugs. They couldn't understand that I hadn't tried ketamine. They couldn't understand that I didn't know what MDMA was. They couldn't understand that I wasn't doing cocaine. It was weird to them. So obviously, I began to confirm a bit, and I started experimenting with some of these substances socially. I started using drugs socially. So going to parties, going to night parties, we'll just have like a drink spiked with ketamine or stuff like that. But I was never addicted. I never got addicted at that point. I was still a social user. So as God will have it, I went through my period in the UK safe and sound and got back to Nigeria. And then a friend of mine introduced me to crack cocaine. That was in August 2011. Now, it's worthy of note that at this point in time, my parents' marriage was on the bridge of collapse. So the home wasn't happy anymore. And my mom just felt that, okay, if they've been through school and you've given them money for whatever it is they want, they're going to be fine. I'm the first of 3 boys, by the way. So just at that same point in time, my friend introduced me to crack cocaine, and that just opened the gates to the 7 years of drug addiction, which you talked about when you started. So I don't know how much you want me to go into all of this.
The thing is, honestly, I'm so fascinated. I'm listening.
Okay,
but I want to know, how old were you at that point when your parents' marriage was collapsing?
2011. I was about 24, 25, actually.
It's so interesting because people always say, because you mentioned it, obviously you mentioned it because you feel it was significant enough to mention that if things are not happy in the home, it did. You see, a lot of times they talk about how things not being happy in the home confuses the child, whatever age. But I'm so interested that your age was 25. And it kind of shakes your core, your foundation. You feel like, what is really real if what I thought of mommy and daddy's union is falling apart? What then can stand together? Amazing.
Exactly.
No, I mean, carry on, please.
Okay, so I started using, and then I remember very well, I started using actively August 2011. And between August and December, when I pulled my bank statement, I had spent close to 3 million naira somehow on drugs.
Ooh. Wait.
Yeah, good.
I need to pause.
Good. That's 5 months. Yes.
3 million
naira. Yes.
I'll do some kind of quick conversion for our
You want to get
audience.
it into pounds? Okay.
Yes.
But at the time, pounds was 250 naira. I remember very well. So if you want to convert, you should convert it using that rate. Yes, pounds was 250 naira at the time.
Please carry on, and as soon as I get the conversion, I will. In fact, let's just say to the audience that's listening, 3 million divided by 250. That's how much you spent in pounds.
Yes, that's how much I spent in pounds at the time. So in December, I pulled my bank statement and I found out I'd spent so much money. Then I knew there was a problem, obviously. And my mom, who I'm very close to, wouldn't even notice because probably she was carried away with what was going on in her marriage with my dad at the time. So she didn't really notice anything was wrong. I briefly went to the UK again for a friend's wedding, and I came back in February 2012, and then this just continued. But at this time now, I had run out of money. I mean, how much money did I have? I was a student, so I had run out of money. So I started selling my stuff. I started selling my jewelry, selling my gadgets, my laptops, my phones. To be able to continue using.
I'm gonna have to stop you there because it's fair to say that you were hooked at this point.
Yes, I was hooked. Definitely, I was hooked. I was definitely hooked.
So
at this point?
How often were you using?
Every day.
Oh my.
And I was using in excess of 3 grams a day. 3 grams of crack cocaine a day.
Oh my goodness. And you lived at home with your parents at this time?
Yes, I lived at home with my parents at this time. So when I go out in the morning, I buy the drugs, probably get a hotel room because I don't want to use at home. It doesn't smell anyway, but then just the luxury of not having any parents barging into your room or asking you to do anything. So I'll probably get a hotel room, call 1 or 2 of my friends. They'll come around and when we use drugs together. Then when I'm going home at night, I'll probably buy 2 grams that will see me through the night. So I'll probably be using till about 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., then sleep off at 4 a.m. and get up at about 9 a.m. I wouldn't be having my shower because all I'll be thinking of is getting my next fix. So I'm out again, and the cycle just continued that way.
Okay, so now my psychologist, my teacher, that kind of hat is on now. I need to know, what was it doing for you?
Okay, crack cocaine is a stimulant. It belongs to the class of drugs that are called stimulants. We classify drugs into stimulants, depressants, hallucinogens, and opioids. Now, stimulants stimulate the central nervous system. It makes you feel happy. You have a sense of ecstasy, sensation. I mean, you just feel. I don't like to use the term high, but then that's exactly what it is. You just feel acting above everybody else. So excessive use of this gets you to a point where you're no more using it to feel these sensations anymore. You're now actually using it to be balanced. You're now using it to just feel normal.
That's it. That's what I was looking for. And that's the thing, because there's a medical doctor who is an amazing guy that I listen to and stuff like this. And he's actually, for about 20 years, or I don't know how many years, he worked very closely with people who are addicted to drugs. And what he'd always say is that, and his name is Dr. Gabor Mate, absolutely love him. And he'd always say, it's not, he doesn't ask them why the addiction, he asked them why the pain.
Exactly.
What was going on behind the scenes that caused you to need a stimulant to be normal?
To be normal, exactly.
Can we go back? Do you know? I know you mentioned the home, but do you think there's any other thing you can help us with that could explain what happened to your state of mind at that point that you needed a stimulant to be normal, to feel normal?
For me, there was an empty void I needed to fill. I grew up being very close to my mom, and then now her marriage was on the rocks, and I felt distant. I just felt mommy wasn't around anymore. I was 25, yes, but then I was close to her. I mean, she followed me to school when I was going to the UK, followed me to my dormitory, made sure my bed was laid, things like that. That was the kind of relationship I had with my mom. So when I got back and these things were happening, it created a void, and I wanted to fill that void by any means possible. So let me explain to you how these drugs work. There's a chemical in the brain called dopamine. I don't know if you've heard of it. So now dopamine is secreted. It's like the reward system for the brain. So when you do something and you're happy, there's dopamine secreted. Now, when, for instance, we're done with this podcast and you're happy with the results, the level of dopamine secreted is going to be about maybe 50 points.
Yeah.
Now, compare that to using crack cocaine. The level of dopamine secreted is about 500.
Wow.
Okay, I'm just trying to put that in perspective for you. So when you start using drugs and nothing else makes you happy anymore, so you just want that same level of dopamine secreted to make you happy. But then you're never going to get to the point of the first use ever again. So you just want to keep using more and more and more and more to up it. But then it's going to get to a point where it's never going to exceed the level it can get up to for you to get the same high you got from the first use. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about.
That was perfectly explained. That makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. So I'm going to ask you a question that I know the answer to, not for your life, but just from things I'm very interested in addiction and all these kind of things. Because I feel like it's something, if I'm honest with you, we're all addicted in some way, on some level.
Of course, yes, we are. Every single one of us.
Exactly. I know you agree with me, but I don't know if people listening will agree, but I know that you and I know this. So my question now is this. I'm asking for somebody who's listening. Why did you get addicted? What was wrong with you? Even though I know, but somebody's thinking, maybe it's you. Maybe there was something wrong with you. Because me, I wouldn't get addicted. So please explain to them how normal this thing is.
Okay, this is a very easy question, but the answer might sound technical, and I might have a lot of people who are going to argue with me. Now, crossing the line from drug abuse to addiction is what I like to explain to people. Now, addiction in itself is a mental disease. It's a brain disease. It's the compulsive need to use drugs, irrespective of its consequences.
Yes.
So I did choose to be addicted.
Hmm.
I got sick.
Please, I need to say, because this is something I didn't choose to be
I
addicted.
didn't choose. No,
We treat people, we treat addicts like they've made a choice.
And that's the problem.
No, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good. Please carry on. I wanted to.
Yes. So like I was saying, I didn't choose to be addicted. I abused drugs because I liked the feeling it gave me at the time, and I felt it was covering up for the void I said was empty.
Yes.
And then in the process of abusing drugs, I got addicted. Mm-hmm. So now I was sick. I became sick. You know, my brain began to act in ways that it shouldn't act, because it developed a compulsion to instruct me to use drugs, even if I didn't want to. So I was doing all manner of things. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to go into my experiences in the bunks. Those are the drug houses, and I'm going to tell you certain stories of people there you wouldn't believe. Good. So my mind was now telling me, you need to use drugs for you to be normal. You need to use drugs when you wake up. You need to use drugs when you want to use the toilet. You need to use drugs even though you're not going to be able to eat. You need to use drugs even though you can't have sexual intercourse. You need to use drugs for every single thing for your life to be normal. That's what my brain was telling me, and that's the disease.
I like to come in here because you're saying the same thing over and over again, and I don't know if people are hearing this. Your drive was to be normal. Your drive was not the drugs. Your drive was to fill a void. If the void wasn't there, you wouldn't feel the compulsion to keep trying to fill it.
Exactly.
So a lot of times we are looking at the addiction, and I think it's a good time to go to the people who were completely hooked in the bunkers, you call it?
Yeah, the bunks.
Okay.
The bunks.
In the bunks. Okay. Yeah. Please, I would love to hear about this. Please share with us.
Okay, Thank you. 2012, I had run out of money. I started selling my things, and then I started picking things from the house to sell. You know, today I take up the plasma TV. Tomorrow I'm taking the AC unit. You know, I started from the guest room where nobody's going to notice. Then go to the kitchen where we have like an extra microwave, and then nobody's looking for it. You know, so then my mom started noticing things were missing. So I couldn't stay at home anymore because I was always quarreling with her. But she still didn't know I was addicted, and she just knows she didn't raise a thief. But things were getting missing at home. So my friends now introduced me to the bunks. Now, like I said, the bunks are these drug houses where these things are sold openly. I mean, drugs, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, it's just sold openly. And then people who have left homes now come there to just congregate and use drugs without anybody disturbing them. So I went there, and it looked like heaven to me, because here they don't sell the drugs in grams. The gram at the time was 20,000 naira, but they don't sell it in grams. They are broken down into smaller pieces where if you can't afford a gram, you can buy a pinch. It's called a pinch. So it felt better for me, because if I had 10,000 naira, 5,000 naira, I could buy a few pinches. And then, so that's where I was. But then it was actually hell. I saw a girl who was pregnant at the time. From what I was told, she got pregnant at the bunk, because most ladies, that's the easiest way they can get money. They have to sell their bodies, unfortunately. And then there's a lot of sexual abuse, there's a lot of violence. And then she got pregnant there, and she gave birth to a really lovely baby boy. Like, as I'm speaking to you now, I'm just seeing the picture of the boy's head. It never left my head. And then 4 days later, she sold the baby. She sold the baby so she could buy drugs. You know, I've seen people who go to take out their blood to sell to blood banks to be able to buy drugs. You know, all manner of things happen in the bunks. Most of the young guys that go out to rob people, pickpockets, scam people just to get money, come back in the evening to use on drugs in the bunk. So I was here for a while, and at a point towards the end of 2012, I knew that I didn't belong to this place, because what was happening then was, maybe I'm there for a week, then I go back home over the weekend and I tell some lies that I've been in my friend's place, or I travel to Kaduna State, which is where I was born, and just but my parents didn't understand what was happening. I was losing a lot of weight. You know, they knew something was wrong, but they didn't know. They couldn't point their fingers on what it was. So towards the end of 2012, I told my parents I needed to see both of them together. Excuse me.
That's okay.
And I sat them down and I said, look, I have a drug problem. And my father laughed and said he couldn't even understand what I was saying, because these are people who grew up in the church. They didn't know anything about drug use in Nigeria. In fact, they just thought it was a thing that was only available in the Western world. So my father said, "What do you mean you have a drug problem? Are you taking too much of Panadol?" So I said, "No, I'm not taking too much of Panadol. I'm taking cocaine." And he laughed again and walked out of the room because he thought I was making that up. So my mom asked further. She probed further. What exactly? How do you get this? I mean, do they sell it in Nigeria? And I said, yes. But my mom was naive on drug abuse, treatment, preventive methods, and all of that. So she did all she knew how to do, which was pray. But that wasn't enough. She started praying, she started fasting, started taking me from one man of God to the other. She wants this man to lay hands on me, she wants that man to lay hands on me. But that wasn't working. None of that was working. And it just got worse for me, because these are my parents who I thought I could run to whenever I have any problem. And now I have a problem and they can't solve it for me. So it was like I was left to face the wolves back. The wolves are, I call the drug dealers wolves because that's where they are. So I was left to face the wolves back. And, that's one thing parents should understand now. If any parents are listening to this, we must understand the times and seasons that we live in. What happened in your time as parents isn't what's happening in our time now. You can't parent the kids of now the way our parents parented us, because so many things have changed. Drugs are sold on Instagram. Drugs are sold on Facebook. You have a delivery for cake, for a nice birthday cake, and then inside of that cake you have 2 grams of crack cocaine. That's what children do in Abuja metropolis, because they don't want their parents to know what they're delivering. So they say, "Mom, we're just having some small chops," and right inside the spring rolls and samosas, somewhere there, you have wraps of weed, wraps of Arizona, Colorado, and things like that. So we must understand what's happening in the times of our children now. We must be involved, we must be actively involved in what's happening to be able to understand how to raise them. So, okay, back to my story. My mother didn't know what to do, so she just kept praying and praying and praying, which was good. I'm a child of God. I love Jesus. I mean, Jesus saved me from years of addiction. But I like to explain to people that I wouldn't tell you to pray if somebody is addicted to drugs. That wouldn't be the first thing I'll ask you to do. I'll ask you to seek professional help and back it up with prayers. Seek help from trained mental health professionals, and then you can back it up with prayers. So I went back to the bunk because mommy didn't understand what I was going through. So I was back in the bunk, and I went to see my pastor, who I was very close to, by the way, and he too didn't understand what I was talking about. In fact, after he prayed for me, because of how tattered and how shabby I was looking, he gave me a lot of money. Not a lot of money. Yes, he gave me money.
No.
And that just showed the level of his ignorance in drug use, because money is like the number one trigger. Exactly. So he gave me the money. He said, "Go buy yourself a phone, go buy yourself good clothes, get a haircut, buy yourself a nice pair of shoes, and go back home." So I took that exact money he gave me right back to the bunk. So with all the anointing oil that was poured on my head and the anointed mantle tied on my neck, I was in the bunk. Oh my days. I was in the bunk again.
I have to say
this. The exact same money that he gave to me. Yes,
you see, the thing is, I like what you said about seeking professional help, because a lot of times I hear people say to me, either something like, "Oh, God forbid it won't happen to my children," or "I'll just pray." And you and I are Christians. We're not saying that prayer is not what you need, but actually God does send and use. When you pray, the answers he gives you are in the form of humans to come and help you. Like now, if your child was going through this, would you not phone David Folaranmi and ask him what to do? Or would you just sit in your, So this even can be an answer to prayer for people listening to you, hearing what you're saying. I'll put your details at the end, and people contact you. When people say to me, "No, I have to." When people say to me, "Oh, we don't need professional help, we'll just pray," I'm like, me as a Christian, who do you think is giving me wisdom for the things that can help you with your child? Do you understand? And it's the same thing with you. Your experience, your wisdom, everything is a blessing for the church. A real blessing. Thank you so much. So can I just ask one question? I know you talked about knowledge for parents. But
Yes.
let's go back to mom and dad. They didn't have the knowledge. Pastor didn't have the knowledge. There's some parents listening thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have the knowledge. What could they have given you at that point that you spoke to them without any knowledge of drugs? What could they have done that you think may have helped?
To be honest, nothing.
Yeah.
You can't give what you don't have.
Oh,
I used to tell my wife something. If I need 1,000 naira and you give me a gold bar that I cannot sell, I have nowhere to sell. You haven't helped me. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. You haven't helped me. You haven't helped me. The gold bar in itself might be worth more than 1,000 naira, but if I don't have access to sell it off, you really haven't helped me. You haven't done much for me.
Gosh.
So at that point, because they didn't have what I needed, the prerequisite help I needed, there's nothing they could have done. Everything they could have done would have been trial and error, which is what they were doing. The prayers, the giving me multivites, it was all trial and error. They just wanted to try. Hopefully this will work. This wouldn't work. So you can't give what you don't have. You can't pour from an empty cup. And in this regard, their cups were very empty, very dry. They had absolutely no idea what to do. So they were just guessing. Yes.
I believe that the key to raising a successful child is to raise them to be authentic, resilient, and to have a sense of purpose. So, I created a parenting journal and an online parenting course to help parents achieve exactly this. The parenting course and journal cover 5 modules to help you discover your child's authenticity, disciple your child by setting healthy boundaries for them, develop your child's academic and emotional resilience, delve deeper into your past so that you can heal and forgive and be the parent that you want to be, and finally design a new blueprint for that parent that you so desire to be. If this sounds interesting to you, go to my website www.raisingyourchildonpurpose.com to find out more, and use discount code podcast10 to get 10% off the current price. Offer available for a limited time only. Now let's return to the podcast episode.
So I think a big thing for parents listening is that if you don't know, it's not shame. Go and find out, right?
Exactly. Go and find out.
Go and find out. If you don't know, go and oh my gosh, go and find out. And personally, I feel like there's a lot that you can gain from social media. I'm on social media, you're on social media. But I find that a lot of times people try and seek help from social media, Google and all that. Listen, unless it's linking you to a professional person's
exactly.
Because the number of times you see people post comments, and I'm very uncomfortable with this. I see this a lot. I'm in a lot of groups and also on social media. I'm quite active, and the number of times I see people post comments asking for help for their children, and then you have like 100 or how many people respond with their own different advice. I'm like, guys, this is dangerous.
Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Please stop asking people who haven't dedicated their lives to understanding these things. Please don't ask them for help for your child.
It's a situation of the blind leading the blind.
It is. Oh no. Honestly, David, this is so good. So I know people want to know how you came off drugs, but before we get there, I'm just still thinking about, let's go to something that is very important in our culture and in our faith. So we're both Christian, we're both Nigerian. And I think a lot of people relate to this actually around the world. We find very much a religious, God forbid, culture that rather than people wanting to wake up to realities, I think as you put it, which was so good for me, you said, people want to hold on to religiosity instead of waking up to realities. And people want to hold on to, sort of things that, religious things, the prayer, the oil and all of that, instead of taking responsibility for their life. So this is not to put blame on your parents. If we're going to put blame on your parents, then we need to put blame on the whole race back down to Adam. So we're not doing that today. But what do you think, using your example, could have been done before you became addicted? What could have changed in your life that maybe would not have led to the addiction?
Okay, I think I'm picking two questions here. First of all, I'm going to talk about the religiosity.
Okay.
I think I've told you I had a very short holiday because I was going around communities in the southeast part of Nigeria, doing some enlightenment programs. I think I mentioned that to you.
Yes, you did.
Yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I was in a village. We had a program for just girls, for just young ladies, and we're talking about addiction to this methamphetamine, crystal meth, which is becoming the drug of choice in southeast Nigeria. Now, before I got there, we had taken permission from the village head, the council. We're coming here to do this, and we're giving them materials for free. You know, we're doing all of this for free. We're charging them. You know, all of this was coming from the foundation. And then the man said, no, that this is a spiritual issue. Their parents should pray more. I'm just trying to give you an example of what is going on here and how ignorant people actually are. So I said, no, this isn't a spiritual problem. This is actually a social problem that is going to generate into a medical issue that will cause you to start running up and down looking for help left, right, center. And then when we went there, at the end of the talk, I had many girls come out to me and say, sir, I have tried this before. Someone has given me this before, and I felt this way or that way. Or people will say, okay, in my community or my street, this thing is being sold. How can I say no? So, you see, the problem we have is our religion. Now, the Nigerians, the white man brought religion to us, but typical Nigerians, everything that is brought to us, we like to overdo it. Yeah. You know, we are now more religious than the people who brought religion to us. You know, so it's amazing. It's amazing. But that's part of why we're doing what we're doing. We need to keep throwing more enlightenment, and we need to keep throwing more. This will be a lot more education, advocacy, and sensitization to change the mindset of our people down here on being spiritual. And sometimes, like one of my friends said, sometimes it's actually just laziness. I mean, you want to throw everything to God. It's laziness. You're not taking responsibility. I mean, something is happening right in front. If your house were burning, would you stay inside and pray? Would you stay inside the burning house and pray? Or you make an effort to get out and rescue some of your important stuff. But once it's actually not physically burning you, you feel, oh, there's a God somewhere. Let me just pray, and then God is going to handle it. So we need to take responsibility. We need to be more intentional about these issues that are arising in our society. I think that was the first question. The second one was, what did you ask again?
So the second one was basically, what do you think could have been done differently?
Okay. Good. What do I think could have been done differently? It brings us back to what I'm doing, more of enlightenment. Now, part of what we do is go to churches. We've been to the Anglican Diocese Union of 13 states out of 36 in Nigeria to enlighten the religious leaders. You know, in our country, most people will run to their pastors before their parents or even their spouses. A wife will run to her pastor before she talks to her husband. A husband might talk to his pastor before talking to his wife. Same with the children. So we start with the religious leaders. They need to be enlightened on these things. If they have the knowledge, then they'll be able to tackle these matters better. If my pastor at the time had the knowledge, he'll have been able to tell me what to do. He'll have been able to isolate me, help me with detoxification. If he felt there was a need for rehabilitation, he would have recommended a rehabilitation center for me to go to. And probably it would have been nipped in the bud. But he didn't know what to do. So there needs to be a lot more enlightenment, sensitization, education, advocacy, you know, which is part of what we're doing. So from the churches, with religious leaders, we go to our political leaders. We need to actually enlighten them on what these things are about, because some certain people actually believe that drug users are criminals. And then you're locking up drug users, which is wrong. I don't know if you saw some of the videos that were trending a few weeks back about youths in the southeastern part of Nigeria that were being beaten mercilessly for using, maybe I'll send them to you after this video, for using drugs. That does not work. It's never worked. It's never going to work. So we have to enlighten our political leaders on how to actually handle substance use disorder patients. And then after that, we go to the schools. We have to enlighten our teachers, because students will sometimes run to their teachers. They want to talk to their teachers first. If they can't, mommy and daddy is not home, Mommy is too busy working, daddy's busy working. They go to their teachers. If the teachers don't know what to do, they give them wrong advice, and then it's just going to make them go deeper and deeper and deeper into what's happening. So there's a lot of enlightenment that needs to be done. If it was done at that time, and maybe my parents had heard about it somewhere, my religious leaders had heard about it somewhere, I probably wouldn't have gotten as deep as I did into addiction. So I think enlightenment is the answer to that question.
You see, I love what you're saying. And I'm in the UK here, and I've been a teacher for all this while, and there's so many enlightenment programs in school on drug use, on some people, even on safe sex and all that kind of stuff. But these are the things that these are the things that we close our eyes to in African schools. Like, no, it's like you're teaching them about drugs, you're teaching them about alcohol, you're teaching. Some schools do it, but a lot of schools don't want to hear these things. A lot of parents don't even want to hear these things. Like if your child comes to you and asks you, "Mommy, what is drugs, or what is this?" Oh, no, don't mention that. You see, and that kind of attitude doesn't actually help, because if you act that way, they will go and ask somebody else that will say, "Oh, you asked me what drug is. Why didn't you even try?"
Exactly.
So, I love the answers you're giving. I know everyone listening to you can hear your experience, your wisdom. This sounds bad, but I'm almost thankful that I went through it.
Yeah. I get that a lot. I've had so many. My mom now says she thanks God I went through it. So I get that a lot. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad for saying that. I get that.
I was holding my sentence back.
No, I get that a lot. It's fine.
You are just so wise and so compassionate at the same time, which is what we need. A lot of things you're saying I could relate to on a different level. How people, first of all, ignore. So they might be talking to me about their kids. They just ignore. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. They go to their friends or go to social media who tells them whatever. They try whatever. It doesn't work. Then they use the prayer without action. Then they use the beating and shouting.
That's worse. That's the worst part.
You see what, so I could relate to a lot of this. Just seek professional help if you don't know. And one of the things that prayer can do is lead you to the right people.
Exactly. Now we can talk about prayers. Oh Lord God, direct my steps to the right person to help me.
Exactly.
Sometimes you need a psychologist.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a psychiatrist. Sometimes you need a counselor. Sometimes you need a social worker. So sometimes it's just all these 4 things I've called are all professionals, but they have different job roles. So sometimes you need to pray to God, link me with the right professional to help me in this particular case. Yes.
Oh, wow. So I think this is the part we're all waiting for. And as much information as you can give us on this, how did it all change for you? How did it all change? What happened?
Okay, I'll try to run through this as quickly as I can, because while I was at the bunk for a while. Many things happened, Abiera. I can't talk about everything that happened at the bunks. At some point, I went to rehab for 6 months. I relapsed right after 2 weeks. I went for one program to the other. I went for fasting programs in certain churches. But then every single time it happened, I was going back to the bunks. At this time, I had sold cars from the house. I'd sold land. I spent millions of naira doing drugs because I was the kind of person who used to binge. And every time I was on a binging spree, I wanted to do it with a group of friends. So imagine buying a gram of cocaine for 20,000 naira with 4 or 5 people. And every time you're buying a gram, you're buying for every one of them. And then you're probably paying for hotel. So it was that excess. It was that excessive. But then my mom was always coming back to look for me. That brings us back to parenting. My mom didn't know what to do, but she knew I didn't belong there. Right in the bunks, I met people who had been there for 10, 15, 20 years, who have been abandoned by their families because their families felt, well, this is a spiritual problem. This guy has been cursed from the village, so there's nothing we can do.
Village people.
I'm not exaggerating. There are people who have been there for 20 years. I wish I could bring my wife up on this live. She will tell you about some of the people we have seen in the bunks. Now, but my mom just knew I shouldn't be there. My dad gave up. It was like, well, he has other children. But my mom will always come back to the bunks. As rough as those places were, these dealers will be yielding their weapons and things like that. But then she will park her car far away and walk right down maybe about 500 meters to where the bunks were and start asking for me from bunk to bunk, because all the bunks are located in the same area. So sometime in 2017, I was there again. I've been there for 2 years. At this point in time, I've lost 4 friends to drug overdoses. 4. telling you. That's how bad it was. So I was there again, and at this time I was so lean, Ebiere, that if I took off my shirt, you could count my ribs. You could literally count my ribs with your eyes without touching them. So she came, and then she found me, and she was crying, and she was like, "Let's go home." I was like, "No, let's go home." So I decided to go with her. But seeing her in that state, I just made up my mind that I couldn't fight this anymore, and I was going to take my life. And I didn't tell her that. It was just a decision I made within me, and I wasn't doing this because I was selfish. I was doing this because I had caused so much embarrassment to my family, the church I grew up in, my alumni. Imagine I went to Covenant University, and then my mates are hearing, "Oh, remember that guy, he's now doing this." So the embarrassment was just too much. So, of course, Satan whispered into my ears and said, "Just take your life. It's going to end all this pain and suffering, not just for you, but for everyone else." Also remember that at this point in time, I wasn't getting high anymore. I was looking for drugs to live a normal life. So it was almost as if I was a sick patient in hospital, probably someone who was sick, suffering from a terminal disease, that was using medication just to remain alive. So I was using drugs just to remain alive at that time. So I wasn't living anymore. So I felt the best thing to do was take my life. So we got home and went through the entire procedure of her telling the estate security, "Don't let him go out." She locked the doors. She had chained the locks. She had made me dinner, and then she told me to have a shower, eat something, then get some sleep, and we'll talk the next day. So she retired to her room upstairs to get some sleep. And I mixed poison and bleach in a bottle of Coke. And I wrote a suicide note and I said, "Look, Mom, Dad, Pastor, brothers, this, that, this. I love you all. I can't do this anymore. This addiction has taken too much from me. It's caused me so much pain and suffering." And all of those kind of stuff. You know how the suicide notes go. And then I drank I drank it. And as soon as I drank it, the pain, I felt severe heat in my chest. So the bottle dropped. And then I began foaming immediately. It was almost immediately. But then, as God will have it, my brother, my immediate younger brother, who shouldn't have even been in town that period, came home and saw me foaming, saw the suicide notes, called out for help. And then my mom ran down, and she rushed me to a federal medical center in Jabi, in Abuja. This was on the 8th of August, 2017. And when we got there, on our way there, I could see my mom trying to hit me, African mothers hitting me to make sure I don't just pass out permanently. She wanted us to get to the hospital. Yeah. And this was like 2 a.m. in the morning. She was hitting me. She had called my pastor, who was praying. They put the phone on my ear. I could hear him say, "You shall not die but live to declare God's work," and things like that. So I got to the hospital. I passed out at some point. So every other thing I was told. So I got to the hospital. I was admitted in the ICU. They had put all of the pipes through my body and tried to flush out whatever I had taken in. And then I woke up about 2 or 3 days later. I'd been moved out from the ICU to another ward. And then I saw my mom praying by my bedside. She was wearing the same wrapper. She just had a wrapper that covered her bust, cleavage. And then she was praying by my bedside. And in her prayer, she was telling God to take her life if that would return me to normalcy. So, when she said that, she was crying and just lying down there. And I heard her. And I actually did pray, and I told God, "Look, I can't do this on my own, and I need you to help me." So while I was making that prayer, I slept off. And then while I was sleeping, I heard something in my mind that said, "A new spirit will I give you. I'll take away the heart of and put in you a heart of flesh." And I woke up. And when I woke
up, my God!
When I woke up, the psychiatrist, her name was Dr. Ada, a very petite woman. She was standing by my side, and I looked at her and I said, "Why did you guys wake me up?" And she said, "Don't you want to wake up?" I said, "No, because if I wake up, I'm going to go back to using drugs because I can't stop it. So waking me up is it's like throwing me back to the wolves. I'm going to be using drugs again, and I'm going to attempt suicide again. So you should have let me go." So she said, "No, I shouldn't say that," and all of that kind of stuff. Then most of my family members were around, my brother, my aunties, they just sat around. So I asked someone for her phone. I think the same doctor and I Googled what I had in my mind when I was sleeping. And I saw it was a Bible scripture from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verse 26. And I just smiled to myself, and I told them I wanted to go home. So they said I have some medication to take. I said, that is all fine. So we went home, and my mom still tried to lock the doors and all of that, but I didn't have the urge to use anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the urge had died. So this was me who was smoking 30 sticks of cigarettes a day, compulsively, using 3 to 4 grams of crack cocaine and probably a gram of heroin to step me down a day, using other substances like ketamine, diazepam, just things to calm my nerves down. This was me feeling absolutely normal. I could eat, I could use the toilet, I could sleep regular hours, and I was fine. So, of course, everybody was skeptical in the house. And then gradually they started letting me go out, and I was able to go out and come back on my own. And they handed me a car. I could drive out and come back on my own. I could handle my phone, because I used over 100 phones, because the phones were the easiest things to go. Once you run out of money, they have my BlackBerry, give me a gram of cocaine, and the phone is gone. And when you go back home, you get another one. So I started using a phone. I could keep a number, and people know that, okay, when they call David on this number, it's going to go through. So that was what happened to me, which is why I like to tell people that Jesus saved me. But then whenever I say this, people say I'm contradicting my statements that says, you know, a lot of people, so they just don't understand. They don't understand my testimony. You know, that God did it for me. I don't know how to put this now.
It's interesting because it makes so much sense to me, though.
Okay.
I feel like you reached the end of yourself.
I did. Literally.
You did.
Literally.
You reached the end.
I was spent.
That's it. We've gotten to the end of ourselves. And you see, what I believe led you, so you got to the end of yourself. But you see, think about it. This is one thing that you mentioned, because I was listening to you. I love this so much. Throughout, there was hope. And that hope was in your mom's love. That's the kind of thing that helps you know that I am still. Yeah. So that's important. Like, if she was praying in her private, place and all of that, because you talked about the things that you heard her say, and the fact that she kept coming back, that gave you hope. And this is why I say that love is the most important thing. So that is it, because she may have given up if she didn't have that love, and that love comes from God. I really believe it. And then you talk about, wow, it was so beautiful when you said what you heard. And these things you're saying, anyone who is spiritual and the Christian will say they have heard some key things they will never forget, and they didn't even know where it came from. And then, like you, they search. So yes, I totally believe it. It's not a contradiction. It's a beautiful story of love, reaching the end of yourself, and you prayed yourself, and that's what tends to happen.
I did.
That's what tends to happen. You have to get to the point. It doesn't matter how many people are praying for you. You have to get to the point where you're like, okay, yes, and that's what happened with you. That's the only time Jesus could really break in, because you then asked him.
I agree with you.
Oh my goodness.
I agree with you.
This is so beautiful. I have to say thank you. It's been such an honor. I feel like you have a book on this, don't you? On your story?
Yes,
you have a book
actually
on drugs that
I have a book that just highlighted some parts of my story, but basically the book is on enlightenment for kids to help them understand drugs and how it affects them. But I'm actually writing my story, which will be published every year, every June 27th, which is my birthday. And coincidentally, it's the International Day.
Birthday!
No, stop it. Don't say that.
It's my birthday.
June 27th is your birthday.
It is.
Okay, so you're my birthday mate. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
I've been looking for a birthday mate since I was a child. I'm now found it. Amazing stuff. So like I was saying, it coincides with the International Day for Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. How real could that be? Like the UN picks a day out of all the days in the world and decides to pick, actually it's the 26th, picks a day before my birthday to celebrate drug abuse and illicit trafficking. So you just see, like, it was written in the stars. I was meant to do this. Yes, I was. So every June 27th, I celebrate my birthday by having a symposium where I put together parents, teachers, religious leaders, political leaders, students, kids, and just enlighten them with my story, enlighten them with my experiences, talk to them about the current trends in drug use, how to avoid the mistakes I made, and provide them with evidence-based treatment methods and preventive methods for drug use. So that's one way I give back to the society. And then we've had 3 editions so far. It's all been very good. And we look forward to having another one next year, which is when I plan to launch my book. So the book is it's going to tell so many stories of my experiences and the experiences of others. My mom has been like, you're releasing too much information. You know our mothers now. Don't
I know.
too much. Because every time I write a chapter, I want to get edited, I send it to her. She said, you don't have to add this. Why can't you say that? You know, but then I think that's the whole purpose. I think that's the whole purpose of the book. So I have everything written in there. And so hopefully by the grace of God, it will be launched on my birthday next year.
Yes, please. And I would love to get that book. It will be a great gift. Honestly, what is
an autograph copy for you. An autograph
honestly,
copy. Definitely.
Thank you so much, David.
You've
been awesome. Please send my regards to your wonderful wife. I know that she's working
my wife,
very close. Yeah, she's working very closely with you on your foundation.
She does.
God bless you both.
Amen.
We will look out for more and more from you. Listeners, I am going to put out the foundation account details. We need to support a fantastic cause. I really hope that listening to David has helped you understand that tackling drug abuse or drug use is not what we think it is. People should not be criminalized for it, but helped. Love, connection is necessary. Parents, I hope that this has been enlightening for you. If you have questions, send them to me, send them to David. If you've got questions, please stay on this topic. It's hugely important for you, for our children. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Raising Your Child on Purpose podcast today. Remember to visit my website at raisingyourchildonpurpose.com and use discount code podcast10 to get 10% off my online parenting course and the journal. You can also follow me on Instagram at abiera.bolu, where I post tips and videos regularly to help you raise authentic and resilient children who have a sense of purpose.